Now you understand why no one sane wants to read your baboon fantasy babble. Chimpanzee
Recently, I got a negative review. It's not for the comic book series Judgment Day, it's for the series it's based off of. The novel series Judgment Day Trilogy, Judgment Day Kings, and Judgment Day Kingdom Come. And I was taken aback for it, and we're going to sit and listen to it today. However, I'm going to let you guys know that I edited it because the language in it is very colorful. Not only that, you might see some skips because there are some spoilers in there that I would like to keep on the wraps because I am very particular about what I let out about the book series in general. Let's go ahead and listen to this real quick.
It is with a heavy heart that I must express my profound discontent with your book series. Against my better judgment, I was lured by one of your advertisements on Facebook, a decision I rue to this day, as it introduced me to what can only be described as a literary debacle. Truthfully, I should have trusted my instincts and abandoned the series after the first book. It gave me a gnawing sense of unease. Yet, in a moment of weakness, I allowed myself to continue reading. The books, for all their faults, had an undeniable pull, much like a train wreck you cannot look away from. To give credit where it is due, the second title managed to elevate the narrative with a genuinely intriguing twist. Who would have thought their mentor was their truly inspired turn? However, the promise of that moment was quickly squandered upon my unfortunate purchase of Kingdom Come, where the series fell apart entirely. The introduction of a feminist agenda, centered around the witches and their absurdly overblown significance, felt like blatant pandering, a desperate grasp at relevance. Their prominence in the story's latter half was both bewildering and alienating.
Feminist agenda. When I first set out to write and complete this book, I understood what it meant to be conscious of what you're putting in media. When I was writing my female characters, I always made sure I kept my wife, my mom, my sister, my friends in the loop. If you are sensing some feminist agenda, I guess it's because I did that on purpose. It's not for any acceptance. It's not for that. I understood that there needed to be some consciousness about how Black women were written, because often what ends up happening with Black women characters in these mediums, they become people's mammies. They become people's stools. They become unhumanly selfless, if that makes any sense. They become everybody's mother. And I didn't want that. I wanted women who had actual feelings to be written into the book. I wanted some humanity to these people. I wanted to humanize these people, these characters. And while they are witches, ultimately every being in the book are human in some way, shape, or form. Human, like you would say, I don't know, humans from Dragon Ball Z or whatever. I did that on purpose.
I began this journey for Anarchius and Ace's sharp dialogue, not for some insufferable spectacle of so-called black girl magic. The character Abel, with his sanctimonious justification for genocide, was the final nail in the coffin. This misplaced victimhood narrative, preaching about retaliation against supposed oppressors without an ounce of nuance, was not only tedious but also dangerously misguided.
The character Abel being pro-genocide, is kind of crazy that the person who wrote this review completely ignored the fact that his contrast, Anarchius, was the complete opposite of him, or not necessarily the complete opposite. He has a different thought process, and he's the main character essentially of the book. So it's weird that they jumped over that or even ignored the fact that those two characters were at odds with each other the entire book series. And then, no spoilers, they had what they had in the end, and they did what they did in the end. But it's kind of weird to completely ignore the fact that the main character of the book was anti-genocide. With that being said, understand, he might be anti-genocide, but he ain't anti-putting his foot in somebody's ass.
The notion that the so-called oppressed should lash out at those who are merely exercising self-preservation is reckless, particularly when the latter are quite clearly the weaker species. Such rhetoric is inflammatory and devoid of intellectual merit.
First thing I want to point out is I came up with all of the concepts of this book as a teenager. All of them, the powers, the storyline, that sort of thing. It's kind of funny that it mimics what's going on in the world today in some way, shape, or form. Art imitates life. We already know that. When we start talking about the oppressed versus the oppressor in terms of the book series, I think we should slow down a bit because, again, it's a fantasy story. While it has real life elements to it, in said fantasy story, while the humans are the weaker race, the humans are also more technologically advanced than everybody else in the story. And the humans have what comic book people would call superheroes, advanced personnel, and individuals in their race. But you find out later who the humans actually care about. And read the story if you care. But yeah, it's kind of crazy that they go with this whole tirade about the oppressed versus the oppressor. Must have touched the nerve there.
And then there was the addition of the Cyclos clan. One can only assume this was meant to be clever, but it came across as a ham-fisted and unimaginative attempt at social commentary.
The entire book is social commentary. It's just done with fantasy and action and adventure and humor and hip-hop. The entire book. Most media is. Jeez.
It felt shoehorned into the plot, lacking any real depth or purpose. The sole saving grace of this debacle was the flamboyant and over-the-top Queen Zira, who managed to capture some semblance of the original series tone.
Of course you would like Zira. She is like overly type sexual. Of course you would like her. Jesus Christ, man.
Beyond that, the book degenerated into a farcical and overwrought mess, abandoning its dark urban fantasy roots in favor of shallow wokeness. In the end, what could have been a compelling narrative has devolved into a cautionary tale of how pandering to modern trends can utterly derail a promising story. Disappointed doesn't even begin to describe my feelings. Sincerely, a discerning and frustrated reader.
One, I am very surprised that the reader didn't even mention the transgender character that I created as a teenager, but I didn't know that I created it. I am very surprised that that never came up while I was reading the original. Now, the original thing that was sent to me, the original review was very hateful, very bigoted, sexist, it was crazy.
Now you understand why no one sane wants to read your baboon fantasy babble, chimpanzee nig beach book. Reading that trash was like being stuck on Martin Luther King Boulevard with a sign stuck on my back reading, "Speak to me orangutan."
But it didn't have any of the homophobia in it. It didn't have any of the transphobia in it. It makes me wonder who actually sent this to me. And also, I was very surprised that I even got this to begin with, because I didn't know hate reading was a thing. I didn't know that was a thing. I thought people usually just put books down that they don't want to read or they feel bad about or whatever. They just throw it away. However, I guess hate reading is a thing. And I'm very surprised. I just want to point out that I took that book series down maybe 2 years ago because, one, I was disappointed with how it didn't really sell anything, but also I realized that a lot of the people who liked my books were women. Because of that, I decided I wanted to redesign the book cover and stuff along those lines and re-edit the book. Not change anything in the book, just re-edit it, because there's some mistakes that are still in there because I'm the one that wrote it, I edited it, and I got a professional to edit every single book. However, there were still issues in the book that needed to be edited. I took this book down, so I was not expecting to see that I was not expecting to see that at all. Interesting. Pretty funny. The bamboo earrings, baby.